Good evening, ladies and gents. This is the Elbows Down MotoGP podcast, the US MotoGP review. I'm joined as always by Keelin. How are you, mate?
Jim, great to be back as always, mate. We got a lot of stuff to talk about from a wild weekend in Austin.
It was, yeah. We didn't have any holes in the track this time of floods. Yeah, it was quite wild. Actually, quite a refreshing weekend again as this championship starts to heads to Europe, as everyone keeps saying. We'll see what really is happening now. Everyone keeps saying that as if these first three races don't count. When we look at the standings now, folks, and look at the advantage Aprilia have and the domination that we're seeing to a degree. I mean, the first thing I wanted to talk about, Keelan, was Marc and the prediction that, well, we don't make a prediction before the USGP because Marc's surely going to win. We weren't the only podcast saying it, probably. You don't really predict the US Grand Prix because Marc's won there 7 times, although in the last 5 years he's only won there once on a race day in 2021. Do you think we're all tempting fate here? It's a bit of a cliche, isn't it? Marc can only beat himself at COTA or win. He's only going to crash or win. It's almost what happened, isn't it, really? Because it started on Saturday when he screwed himself.
Yeah, it definitely did. And I think that, to be fair, the reason we say that is I think we have a very good grounding for being of that mindset. Because we even saw it as recently as last year where Marc was clearly the best rider at COTA, but he kept screwing himself out of the win. So there is a reason why people like us say that sort of thing, because even though he's only won once since 2021, which is shocking to think about, quite frankly, he generally is still the best rider around the circuit of the Americas.
Yeah.
And obviously we'll get into this in a bit more detail in a second, but this is really this past weekend was really the first time maybe ever that I've seen a rider or riders be convincingly better than Marc Marquez at COTA, because it just doesn't happen.
It doesn't. I mean, you could argue that he's not fully fit, mate. Thing is, Marc's quite clever how he words things as to why he's not 100%. But at the same time, he's pretty open about not being 100%. But he won't go into too much detail, which is clever. It must have fried his brain a bit, even though he's mentally strong. That he probably knows he's still the best in COTA. It just something was lacking for Marc. Away from, I mean, yes, he was still at the red sectors in qualifying, didn't he? Watching qualifying, I think, yeah, another red sector. Here he comes. This is the lap. This is it.
Mm-hmm.
He just never came together. Yes, there was a lot of traffic for a lot of riders. Pecco got his lap ruined. And Bastianini got his lap ruined, ironically, by Marc. So traffic was an issue in qualifying that really pissed me off, actually. I was actually really annoyed for Pecco because I really, really wanted him to have a good weekend amongst millions of others, probably, because he deserves it and needs it, and the championship needs it. So for him to get blocked and for Marc to get blocked, it was quite frustrating. Although you could argue if Marc didn't get slowed up in qualifying, that he'd have been on pole and got away with it anyway. But yeah, something just didn't click, and he got fairly beaten, fair and square, again, by a handful of riders. He did come back a bit in the race, didn't he? How far, when he was coming back after his long lap, how far did you think he was going to get?
Well, that's a great question, because with Marc, he's a little bit like Max Verstappen last season in F1, where he has a bit of a Terminator vibe. I do a little bit. You know me, I love a good comparison, Jim. Everybody who watches this knows that.
Yeah.
But with Marc, you just know that he's going to keep coming and he's going to keep coming. And, you know, even when he was as low as P11 after doing his long lap, I always had the feeling he was going to climb. Granted, he was stuck behind Raul Fernandez for a long time, and then he had a brilliant fight with Enea Bastianini. That was incredible
terrific,
to watch.
Wasn't it? Yeah.
It was absolutely amazing. But yeah, to answer your question, I thought he could have potentially got as high as the podium if the race had gone on a little longer. But then I think there were just a few riders who were just too good on the day. And that happens to people at times, you know, that happens to everybody. And Marc Marquez is no exception. And I just think that's what befell him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it would have made that much difference if Marc started on the front row. Of course, it would have been a cleaner, easier way into turn 1 on lap 1. And there would have been less, if you got a good start, less riders in front of you to sort of ride around or ride underneath. I wasn't convinced he was going to win anyway because he started his P6, because he had a long lap. But there was always that doubt. I think it's Marc going, it is COTA. We'll get to it in a second, but we're obviously back at a track where now we're going back to the original tyres, not the special heat-treated tyres that we were using in Buriram and Guyana. But it was still more or less the same result, which shows that Aprilia has still this current form, and we didn't see domination from Marc. So really strange. I was really annoyed at Mark, though, again, millions of others were quite frustrated to see what happened with Digia. Although it was nice to see Mark apologise about that move on Digia when he wiped him out. Obviously, the front was locking, and then when he was able to release, he got through, and then the angle was too much to stay on the bike, and he did take out Digia. I was sat with my partner. We both almost went, "Oh, Mark!" I don't know if that was your reaction as well.
Oh yeah, it was.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't really good enough. He should know better. I know Mark is the most aggressive, but he's also someone who goes for moves that normally these days, at his maturity, he can pull off when he's fully passed. But yeah, that wasn't good enough from Mark. But I think it reflects his weekend, doesn't it, really? He looked a bit desperate. But
Yeah.
thing is, in there, you're coming down from 215 miles an hour, more or less. If you don't get that braking right, it's not like it's an intentional thing to barge someone out of the way or push them wide, let alone take them out. I think it's easy done. We saw it quite a few times over the weekend in Moto3, didn't we? Riders getting sucked in to other riders and then out braking themselves. I think that can happen in almost any track in the world, though, can't it, Keelan?
Yeah, look, with the way aerodynamics work in MotoGP bikes nowadays, it's easier to get sucked into airflow of other bikes maybe than it's ever been before. So
Yeah.
that's definitely a possibility. I think for me, though, the way I look at that sprint race incident between Marquez and Digi is
Yeah.
what's so interesting about it to me is I think this is the first sign of Marc Marquez, but not necessarily being desperate. That's the wrong word because we're far too early into the season.
Yeah.
But I think
Yeah.
I think Mark's recognizing that Aprilia has the best bike now. I have to get out in front early and I've got to stay with them, or they're just going to clear off into the distance and I have no chance of catching them. And I think what you saw with Marquez and Digi was a rider who was so desperate to catch up with the front pack that he was willing to basically do a Moto3 dive bomb and try and get it stopped, and he just couldn't get it stopped because nobody would be able to. It was way too far back. It
It
was
was,
far
yeah.
too reckless, and he quite rightly got punished for it, obviously, after the race. But yeah, I think what's interesting about it isn't the move, but why the move was made. And I do wonder if Marc Marquez is starting to feel a lot more pressure than he did at any point last season. This is going to be something interesting to watch.
Yeah. Yeah, given the fact that he's definitely now, I'd say definitely before we go to more races where everyone tests all the time. But I think he now knows, even though the 26 is probably a little bit better than the 25, 24, for all we know, it's just the Aprilia is that much better. Mark and co will know they're on inferior bikes. So yes, he's going to be feeling the pressure more, knowing that he probably won't ever feel as good as he once did before 2020, or maybe last year as well. But because the game has been moved on by Aprilia, the tech game has moved on. The mechanical grip innovations with aerodynamics have been moved on by Aprilia. So yeah, the pressure's
Yeah.
on. Favorite for the championship still? Yeah, I think so. I think it's Mark, but we'll see. It's definitely the percentage of him going up to win this championship is coming down by the race if it carries on like this by a lot of averages. But
For sure.
yeah. These qualifying blockings I just touched on briefly. We didn't get any penalties, did we? The penalties that
No.
Mark got a penalty, obviously, for taking out Digi. So for the race, he had a penalty with the long lap. Were you shocked? Because Pecco had a train of riders just being lackadaisical on an out lap. I think Aigura was the one in front of him. Now, this was a train of riders that all assumed they were all on an out lap, so it didn't matter. But they weren't turning round. And TNT saw it at the same time I did. I was like, hang on a minute, this isn't going to work out. By the time he catches them, they won't get out of the way, and it's going to ruin Pecco's lap. He had 2 or 3 red sectors, and he had to back out of it. And he was raging, and I would be, because I think that lap was on the verge of being better than his final flying lap was an improvement, yes. But when you're already pissed off, and Pecco, bless him, isn't the strongest mentally, so he wouldn't have been able to put that one to bed straight away like some riders might have done, namely Mark. He'd have gone faster because he would have pissed him off. But I think Pecco would have gone faster, and I think Pecco had a better shot at pole. What was Simon Crayfire's thinking behind this? Because there was quite a few of these happening, not just that one. Do you think Simon Crayfire race was thinking, well, I'll leave it, because if I only penalise one person, I've got to penalise everyone else. And then it's like penalty. So but where does he draw the line? Because that it was quite obvious, I thought, didn't you?
Yeah, I'm glad you've brought this up, and I think you're right to bring it up because this was pretty baffling to me as well. And what's even more frustrating, as you've rightly pointed out, is Pecco Bagnaia was on a really hot lap when this happened. So if you haven't seen this already and you happen to be listening to this, make sure to go back and watch it because you'll understand what we're talking about. And like you said, there's a whole train of riders coasting on the racing line. And we've seen this in years gone by, and it's absolutely done our nuts in because it's the most frustrating thing on the planet when someone's coasting on the racing line, a rider's on a hot lap, and they get screwed over because somebody's coasting where they're not meant to be. And I have to say, this is maybe, and this is sort of to Race Direction's credit and to their curse. This is maybe the first time I've seen them screw something up in a while because every rider that was cruising should have got a penalty for that because they screwed up a really, really good lap from Pecco for not checking and for coasting on the racing line. And the fact that nobody got a punishment at all, I have to say it was baffling to me because in years gone by, we've seen this rightly been stamped out and punished. And the fact that it wasn't this time, I was really, really surprised.
I thought something would happen quite clearly. The Mark thing was weird because Bastianini dived right underneath the inside. And there was loads of
Hmm.
people on social media saying there was plenty of space. No, there wasn't. There wasn't plenty of space. Yes, it wasn't right on the apex, but not every rider on their flying lap hits the apex of one corner perfectly every time. So no, there wasn't. There was probably, if the apex is from here to here, he was about that far off it, was by Mark. And that is too close to the curb. Okay, maybe a bit more than that. But still, it was dangerous. And obviously, Bastianini's reaction wasn't the best, if I'm honest, emphasizing kick to Mark, like, what are you doing? And Mark was doing the whole Lorenzo 2013 Jerez-esque. No, no, no. I think he was referring to something else, wasn't he, before? Which I thought was quite ironic. Because, like, I think Lorenzo did that to you once upon a time, Mark, didn't he? But understandably under different circumstances for folks. But yeah, I think it needs to be looked at. No one likes loads of penalties, guys. But when you are ruining other riders' laps, you are potentially ruining their grid position, which would, in this era of MotoGP, destine their race result and their sprint result. Yeah, because in a race, if you're on the third row, there's very little you can do unless you've got unbelievable pace and you get an incredible start, then maybe you can still win the race. It still happens, maybe, but it's nowhere near as easy as it used to be with cleaner air and everything like that. So I think it needs to be looked at because it's disrupting the natural flow of the weekend, which is
Agreed.
sometimes fun. But then but what you're also blocking is sometimes riders that need to get back into the mix in MotoGP, riders who are getting there and in their second or first year, they might get impeded and we will never know how good they were that weekend. You got to remember these things, it has to be fair across the board. So yeah, get out of the bloody way and be wary, because it was really, really annoying for Pecco for me. But it turns out he ruined his tires anyway in the race, unfortunately. But it was nice to see Pecco with a bit more confidence, I have to admit.
Yeah.
Definitely. Have to talk about Aigura.
Oh,
He was a man possessed. He really was on fire. He really was on fire. It's almost like he broke the bike. He was going that fast. Seriously, it was incredible to see. I do wonder how long his rear tire and front tire would have lasted at the pace he was going. But I felt so sorry for him because
oh man.
he was on fire. Yes, the 2026 Aprilia bike is the best, but I can't see that. I personally don't think I'd have seen that happen on a works factory Aprilia. Yes, it's a 2026 bike he's on, but the engineers and the treatment that goes around the staff in a works team, I don't think that would have happened. That's just speculation, folks. Just putting it out there to the gearbox and the engine. But yeah, really, really felt sorry for him. But it just showed you how good he is. What are your thoughts on Aguirre and his potential? Like, I mean, he'd have got a podium, wouldn't he? He might have even got P2. But away from
Yeah.
that, you can respond to that bit. Also, what do you think he can do this year?
Well, let me put it this way, folks, because this might say it better than I ever could. When TNT interviewed Massimo Rivola after the race, his first comment was apologizing to Ayagura for crashing
Yes,
out
it
and for his
was.
bike failing.
It was, yeah.
That says a lot about how highly rated and how highly appreciated Ayagura is by Aprilia. I mean, that kid was like a man possessed on that bike. He put the hammer down and he never really looked behind him. I thought, if something had happened to one of the front two Aprilias, I think he would have been my rider of the race because I think he
Oh,
was
yeah.
absolutely sensational. That's one of the best rides I've ever seen a rider have, I think, that wasn't expected really to do much. I thought he was unbelievable the way he was riding. Some of the moves that he pulled off on people, some of the overtakes were just, for a rider with
Tell you
10
what,
years
yeah,
more experience.
yeah. That move on Digi was that was that was
Oh, that was
close,
next
wasn't it?
level.
It was
That
good,
was
but at the
so
same time,
good.
it looked like he'd left it a bit late. I think if you again, folks, we refer to TNT because obviously this is a UK podcast. We listen to the UK broadcast, but Neil Hodgson hit the nail on the head beautifully. He said that was brilliant riding from both of them, and he's right because
Yeah, he's right.
Digi didn't have to sit it up. He knew exactly where Igor was, and they both went around that corner side by side, inch millimeter perfect. I thought that just showed you why these guys are the best of the best on the best bikes.
For sure. For sure.
It was a perfect example of professionals in MotoGP. That was brilliant. Yes, yeah, a lot of the time you do see riders having to sit up, um, but that's an example of how good they can be. When obviously, when someone like Digi's on great form and someone like Aguirre's on great form, that's how good these guys can be. It was breathtaking, that move. It really, really was. So
Yeah,
yeah, feel sorry for
I totally
Aguirre.
agree.
Yeah, it will come to him. It's consistency is going to be his thing, and qualifying is going to be his thing. I think Rivera has got a lot of support behind I think he's pretty sure he's going to be job safe in the Aprilia ranks. I think they'd be daft to let him go. I think keeping Iger's head on the game right now and saying the right things in his ear is what should happen. And do you know what? It could have been an Aprilia 1-2-3. Can you believe that? It was nearly.
Should have been.
It should have been. Yeah, it should have been. It wasn't mechanical. Goodness me. I mean, can you imagine saying that a couple of years ago? It's nuts. The progress will continue into Jerez, would you say, for that manufacturer? Can you see into the future?
I mean, if there's one person you don't want to rely on for predictions, folks, it's probably me. But one thing I will say one thing I will say pretty confidently is Aprilia have been the best manufacturer across all three X Factor tracks to begin the season. So one would naturally think that when we go to the tracks where we have all the data from years gone by, Aprilia kind of has to continue the domination there as well. Because if they can dominate where we've never been before, then naturally they should be able to dominate where we've all been before. So if I was a betting man, I would put my chips on Aprilia because I just think they have the best package in MotoGP. You've discussed quite well and quite rightly about the aero developments, the tech developments. I just think it's the best bike in the grid, and I think what Aprilia has managed to achieve is a real golden moment in time where they've developed a bike that can work anywhere, in any condition, on any track, on any given weekend. So to answer your question, yes, I think Aprilia absolutely continues their momentum into the European rounds, barring some kind of major shock.
Yeah, and if Ducati do tend to just run better, then we'll see. But they're not going to. I can't see them losing an advantage like this. I really can't. But yeah, never say never because it's still the second best bike easily. I would say. Hats off to Pedro Acosta. I mean, Acosta again.
Oh,
really, really great. Bastianini, best race I've seen from him in a long time. Apart from his sprint podium in Brno, lest we forget. It's one of those things that I think everything has to be right. The build up to a sprint race has to be perfect for him. Otherwise, even though he's good at saving tyres, the best he can hope for if he's had an okay weekend is maybe P8, P9, maybe P7. If he's had an all right qualifying, he gets into Q2. He's got every chance of getting to the podium, even on a KTM. His tyres looked like they were shot even for him, and then they came back to him, and now he had another pop at Mark right in the last couple of laps. So yeah, hats off to KTM. We know they're struggling, and we know that Mav's had to go back to Europe over the weekends. So get well soon, Maverick Vinales. And there's obviously murmurs about the Aspar boys joining. I just hope that they maintain some stability in that manufacturer because that is not the worst bike on the grid at the moment. I want to go back to VR46, Keelan. We banged on about, well, I did last weekend about Franco Morbidelli.
Mm-hmm.
Why is there no talk of him leaving? Is it because it's a given and Bulega might be going? What's going on? Why is no one from the paddock talking about that? I mean, they all know it's lackluster, his form. And again, on Sunday, it's just not good enough. It's embarrassing when his teammate, again, is fighting for the podium and had race-winning pace. Why is no one talking about him? And only Digi fighting for a job? Can you shine any light on that? Because I'm confused.
I mean, I can take a guess as to why, but I don't think the Italians are going to like me very much for suggesting it. But basically, my thinking is, we talk about Digi and how incredible of a rider he is and what a brilliant start to the season he's had. I think, to be honest with you, if this was I'm going to try and phrase this as nicely as I can. If this was any outfit apart from the VR46 team, I think Morbidelli would have been gone 2 years ago, to tell you the truth, because his run of form's just been that poor and that inconsistent for that long. I do think because it's Valentino Rossi's team and because Franco Morbidelli's one of his closest friends, I don't think they're going to get rid of Morbidelli unless there is absolutely no hope remaining whatsoever for him to regain his form. Now, whether I agree with that or not, that's a totally different discussion. And to be clear, I am a fan of Franco Morbidelli. I thought he was brilliant in 2020 and 2021,
Oh yeah, he was. Yeah.
But since then, he just has not had it, and he hasn't had it for quite some time now. And to be honest, on the balance of performance, Franco Morbidelli should not be in MotoGP anymore, along with a few other riders, if we're being totally honest. But I do think the reason you're not hearing anything about Franco Morbidelli being shipped off is I think it's a lot to do with who owns the team and his relationship with the people within the team. Because if it was any other rider at any other outfit, they'd have been gone a while ago because the performances just don't justify it. And that's just me being honest.
No, and I agree with you. Quite right about the 2020 and 2021. Well, 2021, everyone is. I remember myself and a load of other people were predicting that he'd be world champion because he won 3 races in 2020. He has one. And everyone was predicting, yeah, Morbidelli's the man. And obviously, he did injure himself and he never really got back to form. Never really got back to form. And obviously, well, by the time we got to the end of summer in 2021, Yamaha was a mess anyway. Vinales decided to fire himself. Franco was injured. You had Cal on the Monster Yamaha at Silverstone, and you had Jake Dixon on the Petronas Yamaha. Yamaha was a mess. And it was all because it started because of Franco's injury and then Mav. But I don't really think that Franco Morbidelli ever recovered from that. Yes, he's had podiums and whatnot. He's never won a Grand Prix since. And if he has, then I've seriously got early stage dementia, and that's not a laughing matter, seriously. But moving on from that, I agree. I think it might be who he is and the academy he comes from and the friendship he's in. Yes. Another reason why they're not talking about it is because Firmin has to go there. I think that's daft. I think Rossini deserved to keep him, but that's another conversation that we're not going to waste time on today because we've got other things to talk about. But let's say Firmin goes there as rumoured because he's the Ducati Corsa athlete, so they can move him. Pretty sure that's whether Rossini like it or not, which leaves only one spot left. Right now, you could argue, he's worthy of a factory ride somewhere to a degree. So that means Morbidelli might still keep a job. But then what do you do with Nicola Bulega? Bulega he's just won 5 out of 5 now in this year's World Superbike Championship. He's destined to be world champion this year. He will be world champion this year. I'll be gobsmacked if he isn't. So that, and where they're going to place him. You've got someone who's used to Pirelli tyres. You'd be daft not to put him on a VR46 bike. I would say re-sign Digia. He's happy in the team. Sorry, Franco. Good luck. If you find another ride, you deserve it. We like you, but not in this team. And then you've got Bulega and Fabio Giannantonio. I think that'd be a great outfit. I think that would be a deserving outfit going into a new era, in my opinion.
It would be the rider lineup based on merit. There's no doubt about that in my mind.
That's in a perfect world. Sorry, I just missed out Firmin. That's in a perfect world. By the way, that's if Firmin stays at Grassini. Sorry, Karen.
No, I totally agree, and I think it is the right lineup the VR46 should have. Whether it ever does happen, that's a totally different matter. And I know we're not going to touch on this because this is another thing for another day. But apparently, with Fermin Aldeguer, Nadia Padovani is extremely unhappy at Fermin Aldeguer being yanked away from her. And to be honest, I think she's right to be upset as well because I think she's built a great environment at Grassini. So that's all I wanted to say on that.
Yeah, no, I like that outfit a lot. Well, it's so tempting to keep talking about silly season because you can get lost with a million ideas and rumours you've heard and what's true and what's not, and then before you know it, you're talking about Bastianini going back to Grassini. But another day. Oh God, when is Joe Mir going to stop crashing? Seriously, mate. Obviously, I know Honda have got still probably got the biggest budget. Well, actually, their HRC outfit might be, I don't know, it depends what the Ducati get given by Audi. In the last year, it must have cost them over £1 million worth of crash damage. And I'm not joking.
Oh, easily.
And the rest, actually. It can be £100,000 crash sometimes. When does there come a point, Keelan, when it's too much and they can't justify it anymore? Does it not matter because Honda need to be having riders of his stature who was a world champion and a Moto3 champion, someone of his stature, pushing it, so that they get to the development levels? Or do they get to a point of thinking, no, this is too much now? Have you thought about that? Because it's one of those thoughts that you can't keep doing that to Honda. Even if their bike's better, that we discussed, it must stop soon.
If you're Honda, I think going after someone like Fabio Quartararo is the smart money because he knows how to push the pace and push the package without binning it every single time that he rides. And Honda now are at a point where they don't just need a rider who can push the bike, they need someone who can push the bike without binning it out of every single race that they enter into.
Yeah.
And the problem with Joan Mir is, and look, like everybody, really, I like Joan Mir, but you can't keep binning it, and that's the problem.
No, it's getting expensive for Honda. Don't know what they're going to do with their lineup next year with next to Fabio Quartararo. As long as he's not binning it all the time, fine. But it just for me, that was a point where that's the time that's Alberto Puig sits down with him like, we have to do something here. We have to either you're ending this year, or you stop crashing, or we have to have a serious conversation about if you're going to be a test rider or not, or you have to go elsewhere. Because he's fast. We know he's fast, and a lot of the time he's actually faster than Luca Marini. He probably is faster than Luca Marini. He is a double world champion across all three classes. Luca Marini isn't a world champion at all. But Luca keeps bringing it home most of the time. Luca, again, P9 points. He's there. He's beating Ducatis. He's beating KTMs. He's beating other Hondas. He's beating more Ducatis and all the Yamahas, obviously. Sorry, Yamaha. But yeah, I would right now, I'd keep Luca Marini, help develop the bike. But Mir really, really needs to start bringing it home regularly. You can't just have a couple of P3s last year and keep binning it. I'd love to see what HRC think about it in Japan. Moving through the order, before we touch on Moto2 and Moto3, Aldeguer, impressive again, I think, from what his injuries are. He's not doing too badly. Are you expecting more of him going into rest? I mean, on another 3-week break, you'd think he'd be almost 100%, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I think as well, the fitter he gets, the better he's going to get.
Yeah.
So the longer we go into the season, the more of the old Fermi Aldeguer you're likely to see. So going into Jerez and beyond, absolutely, he should only continue to get better and better. I have no doubt in my mind.
Yeah, will do in time. The Yamaha battle. Oh god. To be fair, this isn't news, folks. Really, if you think about it, there has been times when the M1 wasn't its best a couple of years ago. Last year, the M1 was a much improved bike, but where the Yamaha was taking up the last 4 places, and yeah, Sunday was the same again with the V4, which is, in my opinion, more of an excuse. It's an engine configuration, entire thing in its infancy still. Some might say it's not anymore. Yes, it is in its infancy, for goodness sake. Of course, it's in its infancy. Toprak, though, fair play. He's just beaten Jack Miller, Fabio Quartararo, and Alex Rins in his 3rd race, and they know the track more than he does, and they know the tyres more than he does, and they know the brakes more than he does. Brilliant. I think Toprak is doing as good. He won't be happy. He's doing as good as he possibly can. I mean, what else can you ask of him? He's adapting as fast. I mean, if he had 30 more horsepower, what then? What are you thinking right now? Do you think it's only he can go further? Or is that going to be the ceiling, just the best Yamaha until they get a better engine?
I think at the moment, the ceiling is being the best Yamaha, but that's no mark on Toprak's talent. Those are
No.
two very, very separate things. I think being the top Yamaha and beating Quartararo especially is unbelievably impressive, and that should be given a whole lot of credit because it deserves that. But I think going forward into the season and maybe even 2027, depending on how things shake out, the ceiling at the moment is being the best Yamaha. Anything above that is a true bonus because it's the worst bike on the grid by a mile. So it's sort of at the moment the best he can hope for is being the best of the worst. But that is no mark on Toprak Razgatlioglu. He's arguably the greatest superbike rider of all time, depending on who you ask. And you saw his talent on full display on Sunday.
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement about Toprak. But I just can't wait for that. The Yamaha's to be given a better engine. There is a task coming up, but for the Grand Prix of Spain in Jerez, I hope they get given a better engine. With reliability doesn't seem too bad. Let's just hope they don't get given an engine that is 30 horsepower more, and all 4 of them blow up. That's not what we want. So fingers crossed for Yamaha, because it's sickening to see some of the talent that is there that should be higher up the order. I'm saying the obvious there. I understand that. Let's move on to Moto2. Senna just taking advantage again. He's the darkest horse in Moto2, in my opinion. I don't think he gets enough hype, Keelan. I don't know about you. Would you agree with that? I think people hype up this person, this person. Senna Aegis, I think he won 3 races last year. Senna, was it 2? And no one is really even speculating him about a MotoGP, right? It's everyone else. What are your thoughts on Senna?
Yeah, I love Senna just like a lot of people do, and he definitely does not get talked about anywhere near enough for how good of a
Oh,
rider that he is. When you think about Moto2 rider discussions, especially the riders talking about moves to MotoGP and stuff like that, not a single person mentions Senna ages, which is a shock beyond measure to me because, like you said, he's won multiple Moto2 races. He won very, very impressively in Sunday in Austin. And I think he is one of the darkest dark horses in Moto2, and that's one of the biggest compliments I can give him. I don't think he gets the publicity he deserves, but he's one of the best riders in the championship.
I think he is. I think he really, really is.
I think so.
Quite convincingly on a number of occasions. I mean, he didn't get on with Bagnaia at all. So you could argue there's some consistency needs to be found and adaptation skills to be grown. But I think he's as good as his teammate. I really do think he's got as much promise as Gonzalez. Let's not forget, folks, Gonzalez is one of the most experienced riders in Moto 2. And he's riding very okay and good and just there or thereabouts at the moment. He's not going the extra mile that sometimes his teammate has. Let's not forget, in the last 6 months, Senna's won more races than Gonzalez. Gonzalez hasn't won since Mugello last year. Yet he's still a dark horse. The rumor for this ride and that ride in MotoGP, I don't get it. I really don't get it. I don't think he's got enough of the killer instinct, personally. I think Senna actually is just as good. And I think Liberty will want an Australian. Not that saying Jack's leaving anytime soon. I think Yamaha will want to keep him. But Senna is still very young, and I think Senna will end up in MotoGP. So we just wish some team managers opened their eyes a bit more. I don't know if there's some natural bias or assumption that it's only going to be your Danny Holgado or your David Alonso moving up, or your Colin Vaya or Guevara. People are forgetting the likes of Baltas as well. Results will have to speak for themselves. People like Agius and Baltas need to start winning more. And Baltas needs to win full stop, but he's running at the front. So these they're almost like silent assassins, aren't they? But yeah, we had another race that's restarted with Moto2, Keelan, for the 10-lap sprint. Do you reckon, given the race pace that he truly had, Danny Holgado, would he have romped off with that? I mean, yes, ifs and buts mean nothing, folks, in motorsport. I know that. But was it a bit of a blessing for the rest of the field that Holgado did start 16th due to the timing issues in qualifying? It happened a lot to riders, actually, in that class. And the yellow flags.
Yeah. To put it very simply, obviously Holgado starts P16, and I think that's really a blessing in disguise for all the other riders on the grid because, in my opinion, I think he was destined to romp off for that race, even starting so far down. Because you look at his pace throughout the weekend, and you look at the pace that he very well could have had going into that race. I think Holgado was hands down favourite.
Yeah, he was. It was a shame what happened in turn 1 because even though he did restart the race, he didn't really recover. And finishing P16 was a shame, frankly. I was really looking forward to him carving through the field. And obviously, Joe Roberts actually did better to a degree in that race for a while. So, yeah, it's a shame. I think it is another reason it's a blessing in disguise for everyone else in that category because he is the man to beat. And I think over the season, he could still have the legs on Alonso, but that's very early to say. So, has got that natural talent. Not saying Danny Holgado doesn't, because he does. I tell you what, I still think we're going to have a massive battle for the top between those two. And you could see a rivalry brewing.
Oh, without a doubt.
But I think Holgado might just have another year on him in terms of mentality, maybe, for the championship. And seriously, everyone else is damn lucky that it got restarted in Buriram and it got restarted yesterday in Austin. Well, depending when you listen to this, but yeah, because he was romping away in Buriram, and I think Sunday the restart made him worse, and he wasn't going to come back. He wouldn't have won from the 16th. I know some people said he would have done. He wouldn't have done. I don't think so. You don't see a restart because of humongous accidents like that again, because that was a sickening crash. And as much as some riders like Holgado and Roberts got a second chance, that was horrendous. I hate that feeling when you see a crash and then you get a red flag and then you know why they're not showing it again. It's like, I hate that feeling. It's one of the worst
Exactly.
feelings. One of the worst feelings, isn't it, in motorsport? So yeah, clean races, safe races, and no more restarts. Less importantly, I really don't like seeing hard points in the standings. It really, really irritates my OCD when you
Yep.
see 36.5. I hate it. You see it once every couple of years, and it's really, really irritating. Anyway, rant over. Tell you what's good to see Albolino not running too far back again. He needs to be doing better than he is though, because Baltus and his teammate really is. Baltus keeps getting unlucky, and I think if he didn't have that penalty, he might have stayed in the lead. Oh,
Yeah.
actually, when he took his penalty, he had just been picked.
I'll tell you who does continue to impress. Alex Escrage looked
He
really, really
did.
good at the weekend as well. He was a real standout for me, and the job he continues to do in that bike is absolutely mind blowing because he was really, really solid.
He is proving some people wrong in the way that as soon as we get onto some races, we'll realise that it was just a bit of a testing fluke. Oh, that was a bit of a fluke in that race. No, he is fast, and that forward, he is maximising that forward machine. So we'll have to see. I'm hoping that it maximises his value because you might be able to get. Sounds like I'm slagging off the forward team, but I'll be gobsmacked if he doesn't get a ride with a top Moto2 team next year if he keeps this up. But yeah, we'll have to see. I think he can get more. He can get podiums this year. He can. He can. He's got
Yeah,
the talent.
absolutely, you can. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Also, Moto3, we've got to touch on the fact that Shock Horror Moto3 was one of the best races we've ever seen. I was disappointed for Casey O'Gorman
Yeah.
because I genuinely thought he. Well, we still had some laps left, and you never know what's going to happen in the top four anyway. Yes, that second group had fallen back behind, but Casey's got podium pace and front row guys. I mean, Keelan did tell you so the other week as well. But yeah, he's going places, and he's going to be getting podiums very, very soon. So I'm sure you were crying as well when you're killing on Sunday.
Oh, Jim, I fell to my knees when he
Oh, it
crashed
was
out
annoying.
because I mean, this kid from Ireland gets P2, first Irish front row in modern Moto3 history. It's such an incredible story, and I'm thinking to myself, I see the vision. Circuit of the Americas, first ever Irish Grand Prix win for an Irish rider in the World Championship, going back to I think the 1970s roughly, and then I mean, it just went wrong from the beginning for Casey. He got swallowed up by the chasing pack and he never really recovered from there. He was sort of
No,
hovering around P5, P6, and then he just started getting eaten up by the rest of the pack, which is what happens in Moto3 if you don't get ahead. And then, to sort of brutally tie it all together, he crashes out. And look, I was disappointed. As you can tell, I still am disappointed. But
yeah,
hopefully,
I
this
know.
is only the beginning for Casey. This
Yeah,
isn't like a one and done. This should be a much more
no.
regular thing, hopefully.
It will be. Casey's that good. And look, he's surrounded by riders. He's not been thrown in there to take a nationality box. He's been the riders he's fighting against, beating a lot of them. He's been put into the junior championships at the same time. He's been brought up with these riders. He's raced them before, so it's only natural for him to be as good if he is that good anyway. So I think it's massively exciting, and we'll see more of it, folks. We will see more of it. Veda Pratama, he had a nasty off. Actually, that was a nasty crash for him. Again,
Oh,
fighting in the front group, proving that obviously the first race and the second race were no fluke. So, yeah, he'll learn a lot from that. It was a nasty whack when he landed there in the pits, still a half grin on his face. One of those things for a rookie sensation that happens, and you come back to earth and you realise I'm not invincible, even though technically it wasn't really his fault. No one means to do things like that, but that accident he'll be fine. He'll be fine. And you know what? I think when we go to Jerez, he's just going to be as fast. I really believe he's a permanent fixture in the front group of the Moto3 World Championship. Pratama is a superstar, and I wish him all the best because I love watching him. He goes for moves that remind me of when Mark was at that age as well. Shout out to the Brits, Scott Ogden and Eddie O'Shea. Really pleased with them. 10th and 11th, and didn't really lose touch with the second group or the first group. The second group became morphed into one massive group, didn't it, after the top four? A shout out to Eddie O'Shea for brilliant qualifying as well, getting into Q2, I should say, straight away, and fighting from P17 all the way to P11. Eddie O'Shea did brilliantly. Hats off to him and the progress he's made, sticking at it with MLav, and MLav well done as well. And of course, their ex-rider Scott Ogden P10, just to one, so Scott did well as well. So Yeah, shout out to the Brits. That's good. More of that and the rest, please. Like top 5. Cheers. We could
Yeah,
do with
cheers
that.
and thanks.
Cheers, thanks, bye. Marco Morelli, who looked very, very fast in Brazil, looked like he was nowhere in that race and still managed to bring it back to P12. I remember looking down, he was way down the order, so hats off to him for coming back. Yeah, a lot of riders going through the motions in Moto3. If there's one rider that could see what happened in the last corner coming with Keeles, and we knew that was going to happen with Carpe and Perone. I could see that coming in a mile away. And Apini judged it perfectly, snuck up the inside, and Keeles extends the championship lead and sneaks into P2 as well. And did you see that coming a couple of corners too, like previous?
Yeah, I did, yeah. And to be honest, this isn't some great visionary take because if you know Moto3, you know this can happen to anybody.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
with the way those front four, Pini, Carpe, Keeles, and Peroni were fighting each other, you could see that it was going to be like Miguel Oliveira in Austria a few years ago, where two riders take each other wide and someone
yeah,
swoops in and steals the win. And
yeah,
it's all credit to Guido Pini that he was there to do that because he was very smart about it and he was very, very clever. But credit to Max Keeles, he's had an unbelievable start to the year, and to nab P2 from that wreckage was very impressive. I thought he did an unbelievable job, and solidifying his championship lead's the most important thing.
yeah. Keeles, that's a good head on him to not to assume that that's going to happen, but
Yeah.
he could see it happening to a degree, and just in case it happens, he was sitting pretty. And look, he knows that he's probably got the best packages, and he knows he's got the speed more than anyone to a degree, I would say. So yeah, it was a good decision, and he paid off P2. But I'm really, really happy for Guido Pini. I always love seeing someone win their first race. Truthfully, I think he'd have been happy with a P3, but Carpe had to go for that on Perone. I think he had to do it. I think Perone would have done the same thing. I think Keeles might have even done the same thing. But it's great to see that because at the same time, no one went off track really. Just stayed on the black stuff. It wasn't like when Mark knocked Acosta off the track. People are still talking about that. But no, it was good to see, and we'll see more of it. Definitely in Jerez. I think we'll probably see a longer train of riders in Jerez, almost guaranteed, because it's more of a flowing track and there's less low corners. We'll have to wait and see. And for that, 3 weeks to wait now, folks, more or less. Best part of a month to wait till the next race because Qatar's moved. We'll obviously still have podcasts in these weeks leading up to the Spanish Grand Prix. And Keelan will be joining. We do have another podcast coming up next week about Fan Stories Part 2 with Ryan. And those of you who love talking about, oh, I was here for that race, I was here for that race, all of that. If you love that sort of thing, then you've got your own to tell. Check out next week's episode. And we are considering having a few guests on as well, some listeners potentially. If you've got if you've got like an insane list that makes mine look ridiculously small, then yeah, we'd like to hear them. Because I love fan stories. There's nothing like turning up to a track and having that smell and the sound before you get there, and then other excursions you meet people there, and obviously as the day goes on, something happens, you never forget it. So that's going to come out part 2 next weekend, so look out for that, folks. And Keelan, thanks again for tuning in. I think we touched on everything this week. I felt like we rushed it a bit, or I rushed it a bit, but I'm pretty sure we touched on everything.
Yeah, I think we got through pretty much everything there. It was a
Pretty
real
much.
jam-packed weekend in Austin. You know, we had thrills, we had spills, we had everything in between as always. We have rising contenders, we have giants struggling. I mean, what more can you ask for? This is the beauty of motorcycle racing, you know. Literally cannot predict from not only one weekend to the next, but from one race to the next. And that's why we love doing what we do.
Yeah. Well, we certainly got. It was maybe a bit more predictable last year in the Premier class, but this year it definitely was. But this year, I really don't know what's going to unfold. I really don't, and I love that. I felt like we craved a bit of that feeling last year, yeah, but yeah, we'll have to wait and see. So we've got 3 weeks to wait, folks. But we'll keep making podcasts, and yeah, we'll see you next week. Thanks, guys. Cheers, Keelan.
Cheers, Jim. See you all later.